Welcome back to Kalinga Games. This week is going to be the first of my Series 10 teams. I'm building these teams in no real particular order, basically going by my favorites. So to start off, we were going with my absolute favorite, which is Ho-Oh. This was the first Series 10 team I made, which is the same team I used to get to Master Ball tier. Unfortunately, the meta has changed a lot since I made this team. But I still really love Ho-Oh. I still really like this team. It's still really fun. It's just not as consistent as it was when I first made it. But it's still very threatening. It's still got a lot of really fun little tricks on it. So we're going to go over this team. And I apologize for the late upload. I usually like to upload on Saturdays at 1. But I've had a very busy week. And then I'm also on vacation this week, so I had to prepare for that. So I'm kind of uploading it as soon as I get a chance to. So I apologize, but I'm going to try and get back on my schedule as soon as possible. After that little interlude, we'll go ahead and get into the battles now. Okay, so start of the first video, my opponent has a Nihilego, a Rillaboom, a Lunala, a Stakataka, a Landorus T, or Therian, and then a Volcarona. So what I'm going to go ahead and bring here, because they don't have a weather, I'm going to bring Torkoal and Vileplume, with Ho-Oh and Hitmontop in the back. Torkoal and Vileplume are a really good set together, and Ho-Oh and Hitmontop are also a very good combination. I thought about bringing Rillaboom here, obviously, but ultimately I go with the Ho-Oh Hitmontop as the two back Pokemon. If you can't tell, it's been a little bit between the video and when I'm doing my voiceover. I usually like to do it right before, but I took a little bit of a break here, so I may be talking a little bit out of sync with the video, but I'll try to avoid that as much as possible. So I go ahead and bring my Torkoal, Vileplume, Hitmontop, Ho-Oh, which are two of the better combinations I've got. They're both two sets of Pokemon that really like to be next to each other on the field, and hopefully you'll be able to see why in this battle. So they lead their Rillaboom and their Nihilego against Torkoal the Sleepy and Vileplume the Early Riser. So they set up their grassy terrain, and eventually I set up my Sun with Torkoal's Drought. This team likes to function in the sun, other than Vileplume it doesn't have to, but they're both pretty good in the sun. So I thought about yawning here, but turn 1 I protect the Torkoal because I'm worried about the Meteor Beam from Nihilego, and I Sleep Powder to protect Torkoal from Nihilego on the next turn. So they fake out into Vileplume, which was expected, but Vileplume doesn't carry Protect, so there wasn't a whole lot Vileplume could do there to prevent that. They do use Meteor Beam, which can be a little bit deceiving because the charge animation always activates. It's not until you get to the second turn with the power up that you actually see if it misses or not. So they do target into the Torkoal, so I did protect it there. And then what I do here is I yawn into the Rillaboom, and I Sleep Powder into the Nihilego. So Vileplume gets the Sleep Powder off with Nihilego is pretty fast at 103 base speed. With the Chlorophyll, Vileplume actually is faster than Calyrex Shadow, which is one of the reasons I use it on this team. So they U-turn out. Eventually they decide, and they bring in their Landorus T. So Nihilego's already asleep, and then Landorus T goes ahead and gets the yawn here from Torkoal. So it does intimidate us, but both of these two are special attackers, so we really don't care about that. And then I go ahead and Eruption, and after you. Which, this is the main reason you want to run these two together. Vileplume gets after you, which Lilligant also does, but two of the things that Vileplume gets that Lilligant doesn't that makes it useful is it gets Moonblast to deal with Dark Urshifu, and regular Urshifu, I guess. and it also gets poison typing, which unfortunately doesn't take this Sludge Bomb, but it makes it neutral damage against Sludge Bomb, and it also resists Xerneas' attacks, which is pretty big. So then they get a U-turn here off on a Torkoal, but luckily Torkoal is a monster on the physical defense side, and takes almost no damage from that. So then we wait some more until they finally bring out their Stack Attack here. Which they're running the Grass Seed Stack Attack, which tells me that they're very invested in the defensive side, but it could also mean that they're not invested on the attacking side or on the special defense side. So those are two things to keep in mind. So I go ahead and bring out my Hitmontop, get a defense, or not defense drop, an attack drop on Stack Attacka. And then I don't know if you saw it when I was sending it out, but Hitmontop is holding the eject button item. So what I do here is I go ahead and protect my Torkoal, and I close combat into the Nihilego. What I should have done here, looking back on this battle, is I should have faked out the Nihilego, but there's not a whole lot I could do now, obviously. But it would give you, another chance to get another hit on it, because as you can see here, the close combat does not take out Nihilego. I thought it would, because of how bad Nihilego's physical defense is, but it's really not too big of a deal there. Hitmontop has all defensive investment. It doesn't have any attacking investments, so I really shouldn't have banked on it being able to take down the Nihilego on its own. So what I do here is I Eruption with Torkoal, and I go ahead and do another close combat into Nihilego, which doesn't happen because we get hit and the eject button goes off, which isn't too bad. I like to, well, it's on there for a reason. I like to be able to cycle Hitmontop in and out, which Incineroar, which is another Intimidator, which is probably the superior Intimidator, to be honest, but I already had 2 Fire-type Pokemon on this team, and I didn't want to add another one. But they like to be cycled in and out, so I thought the eject button item would be pretty good on it. They do hit a Sludge Bomb into Ho-Oh, which Ho-Oh has an incredible special defense. It doesn't have any special defense investment, but just its natural special defense is just good enough that it doesn't really matter. They do get the poison though, which is unfortunate, because Ho-Oh is it likes to stick around on the field for a while. It's got the defenses to do that, and it also gets Regenerator to switch in and out. So what I'm doing here, because I took a big hit, I go ahead and switch out Ho-Oh just to get that Regenerator bonus, which gives it a 33% I guess recovery every time it switches out. So that's huge. That's one of the big reasons I like using Ho-Oh. There's a lot of board positioning in Ho-Oh games that you don't always see with a lot of Pokemon. So they go ahead and do another Rock Slide here. I switch out into Hitmontop and I Heat Wave with Torkoal. Unfortunately, this Nihilego is very defensive. We do get the crit on Stack Attack and knock him out. I don't think we needed that crit, but I'm not sure. But the Nihilego survives that, causing a bunch of problems for us. But it Power Gems into the Hitmontop, well, into the Ho-Oh, which Hitmontop switched into. So that does give us a survival there. So we prevent the Beast Boost on Nihilego again. So Rillaboom comes back out, gets the Grassy Terrain on the field, and I switch out Torkoal into Ho-Oh, just to get some more positioning going, being able to give us chances to switch in and out with Ho-Oh. And then that would also be able to let us reset the sun. So we send out Ho-Oh, and Hitmontop gets a Fake Out into Nihilego and gets the KO. If we would have done that earlier, it's hard to say what would have happened, but if we would have done that earlier, we probably could have knocked out the Nihilego before, and not had to devote so much time and energy into. not devote so much time and energy into knocking out the Nihilego, but it happens. So then they go ahead and bring out their Landorus here, which does get an Intimidate onto Ho-Oh and Hitmontop, which is unfortunate on Hitmontop, but was expected. We're always planning on switching Ho-Oh back out just to get that Regenerator bonus. And then we can go ahead and Wide Guard with the Hitmontop. Which, that's another thing that Hitmontop gets that Incineroar doesn't, in terms of Intimidators and their roles, is that Hitmontop also gets Wide Guard, which is one of the big reasons why it pairs so well with Ho-Oh. Obviously Fake Out is nice, obviously Intimidate is nice, but Wide Guard is there for Rock Slide. Rock Slide can be a lot of problem for Ho-Oh, which Hitmontop helps it avoid. Which, there's the Rock Slide right there. So, it pays off already. So then they go ahead and they bring out, or they don't bring out, I bring out my Ho-Oh and the Trick Room ends. So one of the big questions whenever you fight in the Landorus T, because it can run so many different items, is what item is it running? My biggest fear here was that it was Choice Scarf, because that would mean it for sure outspeeds my Ho-Oh, which would be very unfortunate when we're down to 2 Pokemon on each side. So I go ahead and protect my Ho-Oh, expecting them to focus in on it, which they luckily do with Grassy Glide, which was kind of unexpected, but Grassy Glide and Rock Slide. So they get a Rock Slide here. It does hurt the Torkoal, but because of how good Torkoal's defense is, it's able to live, but unfortunately it hits the Pokemon I didn't really care about it hitting, and it misses the Pokemon I needed it to hit. So Landorus sticks around and Rillaboom's on the field. And they used Rock Slide again, so I'm still not sure if they're choice locked or not. But at this point, I have to either risk the double protect, or I have to just hope that they're not scarfed. So what I do here is I just hope they're not scarfed and attack into the Landorus. Because it's not great if they're scarfed, but it's not very likely to get double protect off. And I don't think Torkoal would survive a Rock Slide anyway, so I just have to hope I outspeed, which we do, and we get the double knockout on this turn, giving us the win in battle number 1. So really good game to my opponent. Setting up the Trick Room was unexpected, and I really should have utilized Fake Out on Hitmontop a little bit more, just to give my partner Pokemon some more free turns. But we get the win in the end, which is always really good. And then we get a Rare Candy, which is kind of nice. And we get to look at their team. So their Nihilego is kind of bulky. It's actually very bulky. It's got a lot of health investment there. Assault Vest, Rillaboom, as expected, with a lot of interesting spreads on this team. Lunala with Colbur Berry, which didn't come out, but has a very good special spread with special defense, HP, and special attack. Pretty generic Stakataka, Rock Slide, Gyro Ball, Body Press, Trick Room. Landorus T had the Rocky Helmet and no speed investment, which I should have figured because of the Trick Room, and then they had a Flame Body Volcarona, which was pretty much what you expect. Alright, getting into game number 2 against a Calyrex Shadow Rider with Incineroar, Stakataka, Urshifu, Whimsicott, and Entei. Two things that are always concerning with the on this team are which Urshifu is it, and what item Entei has, because Entei can run a whole lot of different items, which recently it seems like Choice Scarf is the item that's been run on it the most, which lets it outspeed Zacian, and it has the ability to one-hit KO. It has the ability to one-hit KO most Zacians. So what I bring here is I bring Torkoal Vileplume with Ho-Oh and Hitmontop in the back again. I thought about bringing the Rillaboom. Rillaboom is a good answer into the Shadow Rider, because it gets knockoff. And then Regieleki is mostly on this team for speed control, but unfortunately with Whimsicott, it's not going to be able to outspeed their team, so there's no real point in bringing it here. Which is a little bit difficult to work with if any Tailwind Pokemon are on the teams, then Regieleki's role is not as useful, I would say. So they start with their Whimsicott and their Entei, which is a very scary combination, and I lead my Torkoal and my Vileplume. So Torkoal sets up the Sun, which is why Entei is so scary here. Because we don't like that Torkoal can one-hit KO us. So what I do here is I yawn into Entei, and I switch Vileplume out into Ho-Oh to prevent it being from one-hit KO. Yawn is a very, very underrated support move that Torkoal gets. You don't really see it a whole lot, but it makes it very, very useful, especially if teams are focusing on its partner and not it, once its health is down a little bit, because it lets it really, really serve the team, force switch outs or force Pokemon to go to sleep, and it can really change the tide of the battle. So they protect their Whimsicott, and they Eruption, which is interesting. I don't really see Eruption on many Entei. I don't know if you've seen my videos, but I did run a Regice team in Series 9 that used Lava Plume Entei to set up its weakness policy. If you haven't seen it, I'll link it here. It's actually one of my favorite teams that I've ran. It was actually a really good team. But anyway, so this next turn I go ahead and Heat Wave and Sacred Fire into the Entei, which was not the best move in the world, but they go ahead and bring out the Incineroar, which does get the Intimidate drop onto Ho-Oh and onto Torkoal as well, but we don't care about Torkoal. And they go ahead and get that Tailwind up with Whimsicott, which is not great. So we do get the Sacred Fire off into Incineroar, and we do get the Heat Wave off, which does big damage into Whimsicott, one-hit KOs it, and does almost nothing to Incineroar. So looking back on this turn, what I should have done, it's obviously a risk because Entei could just go out in a blaze of fire, but I should have switched Entei back, or I should have switched Ho-Oh back out into Vileplume, or I should have switched out into Hitmontop, one of the two. But I should not have left Ho-Oh on the field because it was pretty obvious they were going to switch out there, and they were obviously going to switch into something that could take the Ho-Oh attack. So what I do here is I go ahead and just double protect both Pokemon because of the Fake Out. Ho-Oh can actually take an Astral Barrage, but with the Fake Out coming from Incineroar, we have to go ahead and limit how much damage it takes. Eventually. They were probably thinking about which Pokemon they wanted to Fake Out, and it didn't matter. Oh, I take that back, they didn't Fake Out. So they go ahead and Astral Barrage, and they Parting Shot into the Torkoal slot, which is interesting. So what I do here is I switch Torkoal out into Hitmontop, expecting them to Parting Shot into it again, and I go ahead and Sacred Fire into the Calyrex slot, just trying to get as much damage as I can. Which in the Sun, Ho-Oh already hits pretty hard, it's got 130 base attack, but in the Sun, Ho-Oh does a ton of damage. So I go ahead and bring out the Hitmontop, get the attack drop onto Incineroar, which probably won't matter because it's Parting Shotting, or I expect it to Parting Shot here. And they Astral Barrage, which is a very scary move. It's the reason I brought off Hitmontop, so I could Wide Guard the next turn. But I didn't really think it through because the eject button kicks it right back out anyway. And then I found out it's Life Orb on the Calyrex. So at this point I'm not in a great position. I kind of have to just hope that Vileplume can do something good here. But unfortunately I was wrong about which Pokemon they were targeting, and they hit Ho-Oh with the Parting Shot. So Ho does get its Sun boosted. Ho does get its Sun boosted Sacred Fire, but unfortunately it's already -2 now, so it does not get the KO on Calyrex. If you haven't figured it out, I don't win this game because that was my chance to KO with the Calyrex, and it did not happen. So I go ahead and switch back into Hitmontop and protect the Ho-Oh. Not really sure what I'm hoping for here. Kind of just hoping that they misplay and don't click Astral Barrage again. Maybe protect, I'm not sure what I was hoping for, but you gotta kind of hope that your opponent misplays when you're down this far. And they are giving some serious thought to their moves, probably more thought than I am, which I should have thought about my moves more. But I bring out Hitmontop here, which Entei doesn't care about, and Calyrex cares about probably even less. And I protect my Ho-Oh here. So they Flare Blitz, revealing that they are Scarfed, knocking out my Hitmontop, which isn't the worst thing because it prevents the Calyrex from getting a special attack boost. But of course they read me very hard here, and they get their substitute put up, which is not great for me. So I go ahead and I switch in my Torkoal here and get the Drought put up. So what I do is I go ahead and protect Torkoal, and I switch Ho-Oh out into Vileplume, hoping that I can get a switch out, get some health back, and be able to live an Astral Barrage later. The Torkoal gets the protect, and Entei attacks into the Torkoal, which is very good. But Calyrex uses the Astral Barrage. Fortunately here, Vileplume is able to take it. Vileplume is max speed, max HP, so it actually has the ability to survive an Astral Barrage. So I'm giving some thought to my moves here. I was going to switch Torkoal out, which I decided not to do, and I just decided to go for the Double Protect because I want Ho-Oh to have as much health as it can coming in. So they do protect the Calyrex, which fortunately I called right, and I protect my Torkoal. Do not get it, and unfortunately their Choice Scarf Entei outspeeds my Vileplume and goes down. So what I needed them to do there was target into the Torkoal, which again you're hoping your opponent misplays, and then I could get the Sleep Powder into the Entei. Unfortunately, we didn't get that. So they KO over my Vileplume, and we go ahead and protect Torkoal one more time and try an Earthquake here, just to try and get a... I'm hoping that I can survive whatever Entei dishes out, and then the Calyrex will KO itself with Life Orb Recoil. But I do not get that, so we'll see. So I protect the Torkoal. Entei correctly calls it and Flare Blitzes into the Ho-Oh slot, which does way more damage than I thought it would. Because of the crit, but I think I think Entei actually gets that KO in the sun, even without the crit. And then Astral Brush goes into Protect, so it doesn't even get the Life Orb recoil. So that's very unfortunate. So we go ahead and just call it quits. My opponent played a really, really good game. They played much better than I did in this game. And it just shows you how good Calyrex Shadow Rider can be and how good Choice Scarf Entei can be. They both are very big threats. And on to the third battle. So this is another Calyrex Shadow team, but this one has a very different supporting cast. It's got Mienshao, Araquanid, Incineroar, Calyrex Shadow, Stakataka, and Indeedee. Two Pokemon that have gotten a lot more play that I actually really like are Mienshao and the Araquanid, which neither one really saw a whole lot of play before, so it's really cool to see Pokemon that excel in a certain meta. And I really like to see Pokemon like that. So anyway, on this one I bring my Torkoal, Vileplume with Hitmontop and Ho-Oh in the back again. If you haven't been able to tell, it's not always the best Pokemon to bring, but these are my favorite Pokemon to bring. I really, really love the Eruption After You strategy. It's one of my favorites. So, and I really like Vileplume. I wasn't a huge fan of Vileplume, but I used it in my 1 week Monotype Draft League, and I had a very big appreciation for it. And I used to use it in Fire Red and Leaf Green a lot, because, I don't know, I like to use different Pokemon, but it was also really good in that. So Vileplume has quickly become one of my favorite Pokemon. So, I don't know. It's just really fun Pokemon to use, so I like to pair these two up. So turn 1 I go ahead and yawn into Stakataka, and I Sleep Powder Indeedee, but they switch out their Stakataka and they go ahead and bring in Araquanid. So I Sleep Powder here, which obviously puts it to sleep. I don't know if you've seen, but Vileplume is carrying the Wide Lens item, which increases the accuracy of any move it uses by 1.1 times, I believe. So instead of Sleep Powder being 75% accurate, it's actually closer to 90% accurate. So it's a lot more reliable with that item. So I go ahead on this turn. I go ahead and switch Torkoal out into Hitmontop just to get the Intimidate onto Araquanid, and I go ahead and Moonblast Indeedee. I'm hoping to get a special attack drop, which is another nice benefit of having Moonblast on Vileplume. So I get decent damage here, but no special attack drop, unfortunately. But Indeedee does stay asleep, and they keep in their Araquanid and use Liquidation on Hitmontop. So bye-bye Hitmontop. And I bring in the Ho-Oh here to replace it. So Araquanid goes to sleep because it didn't switch out after the yawn. And for this turn, I thought about Sacred Firing into, I Sacred Fire into the Indeedee, and I switch out my, eventually. You can see I thought about this one a lot, because this was a pretty critical moment of the game where I know Araquanid is going to stay asleep for at least a turn, because it hasn't burnt his leap turn yet, but Indeedee could wake up. So I go ahead and try and Sacred Fire into the Indeedee, and switch Vileplume into Hitmontop. Which is very useful because now Araquanid is at -2 and in the sun. Araquanid's got a really cool ability called Water Bubble, which makes it take 50% less damage from fire-type moves, and it limits how much damage it can do, or it limits, but Water Bubble gives it a 50% resistance to fire-type moves increases the damage of water type moves, and it prevents burn. I don't know why I fumbled over that so much, but yeah, that's what it does. So I was thinking about Brave Birding into the Araquanid here, but I go ahead and I Earthquake, because I was hoping to knock out Indeedee here and get some chip damage onto Araquanid. Unfortunately, they protect the Indeedee, and I wide guarded here with Hitmontop, expecting an expanding force, which unfortunately did not come, and they do get the protect, so Indeedee sticks around for another turn, and I Earthquake here. What I was worried about with Brave Bird was that it would get pulled away, and I would get unnecessary chip damage on Ho-Oh. Looking back now, there was really not a whole lot of downside to doing Brave Bird, so I really should have gone for it. But I figured a spread move here would be pretty good to get some chip damage and knock out the Indeedee. So I just do the same thing again, Earthquake wide guard. And one other thing with those, maybe expecting them to switch out into Stakataka, which is rock and steel type, so it would have taken 4 times effective damage from Earthquake, so that would have been really good if they switched that in. So I was trying to pick a move that would call their switch, take out Indeedee, and get some chip damage on Araquanid, which is the biggest threat to my team. But unfortunately, it didn't do a whole lot to Araquanid. It does, as you can see here, knock out the Indeedee in one hit. Not in one hit, it took a lot of damage before this, but it had the damage to knock out Indeedee from that range. But it didn't do what I was hoping it would do, which was give me enough damage on Araquanid. Araquanid wakes up and uses Liquidation onto Ho-Oh, which, thanks to the sun still being up, does not knock it out. So like I talked about before in the early battles, Ho-Oh has the ability Regenerator, so even if Ho-Oh gets to low health, it can still stick around for the long game just by switching in and out. So they go ahead and bring in their Calyrex Shadow Rider here, and I'm thinking about switching here, but I decide not to, because I don't want to switch in the Torkoal Vileplume set and have them try and beat the remaining Pokemon at low health. So I think about it a lot, but what I decide here is that I need those two at maximum HP to win the rest of this battle. So I go ahead and I Sacred Fire, and I wide guard here. So unfortunately Calyrex calls the wide guard and uses a single target move to knock out the Ho-Oh here, which unfortunately gives them a Grim Neigh boost, but not 2, which is important. And we do find out their Life Orb, which is very, very good information to have. And then they lunge into Hitmontop. So unfortunately I lose my Hitmontop Ho-Oh duo, but that allows me to bring Vileplume and Torkoal back onto the field, with them both being at max HP and setting the sun back up for 5 turns. So that 1 maximizes Torkoal's damage output, and 2, it makes Vileplume faster than Calyrex Shadow. So Timid Vileplume with max speed is 2 points higher in speed than Timid Calyrex Shadow with max speed. So if anyone's wondering why I chose Vileplume here and if I was taking unnecessary risks, slightly I would say, but Vileplume has the niches, I believe, required to make it useful. And I really like Vileplume. I think when I make a Groudon team I'm going to stick with using Vileplume as a supporting Pokemon. But it can be a little awkward forcing Torkoal Vileplume into sets where you want the sun. So that can be a little weird, but all in all I think they make a really good duo here. So I protect Torkoal and I Sleep Powder into Calyrex Shadow. So what I do here is I go ahead and Eruption and Moonblast into Calyrex Shadow. They just wide guarded, but my thought process here was that with Calyrex's sleep, they would not wide guard, they'd try and get some damage out. And I try and Moonblast Calyrex Shadow just to get a special attack drop. So I do call it correctly, and they switch out the Araquanid into Stakataka. So I do call that they did not do wide guard here. So I get the Moonblast, which does a critical hit, but it does not get a special attack drop, which is fine with me. And then Torkoal gets a big eruption off here. So that knocks out the Calyrex, and it almost knocks out the Stakataka in one hit. It's not the same as in Series 9, where Torkoal was like a massive threat, but Eruption Torkoal is still doing a ton of damage out here, and I'm really surprised we don't see more use of it. So this turn, I go ahead and I protect the Torkoal, and I Giga Drain the Stakataka just to get that final bit of damage to knock it out, because I don't want Trick Room to go up here. The Torkoal protects, and we get the Giga Drain off, knocking out the Stakataka, which is big. I used to run Solar Beam on Vileplume, but it was just very unreliable, especially because Vileplume was not a good Kyogre check that way. It would take too much damage, and it wouldn't be able to get the Solar Beam off. So anyway, here I Eruption, and I Sleep Powder Araquanid. That way, if they Wide Guard, then they go to sleep, and I get to do it the next turn. And if they attack, then they go to sleep. So we get them to sleep, they try to attack us, and then we go ahead and after you Eruption, just for some fun here. But they go ahead and forfeit, so that is game number 3. So I'll go ahead and go over the team now. Okay, so this is the team here. I figured I'd just go ahead and keep the rental code up here, just make it easier. And I will put a Pokepaste in the description in case anyone wants to use it on Showdown, or put it in Showdown and mess with it and change it as much as you want. But we have Torkoal with a quiet nature, I believe. The minus speeds plus special attack with Protect, Heat Wave, Eruption, and Yawn. Torkoal's max HP, max special attack, max HP, max special attack with Charcoal as the item, and Drought as the ability. Vileplume is Giga Drain, Moonblast, After You, and Sleep Powder, with Chlorophyll's the ability and Wide Lens as the item. Vileplume has max HP, max speed with 1 point in special attack. Ho-Oh with Regenerator and Safety Goggles, with Protect, Sacred Fire, Brave Bird, and Earthquake, max speed, max attack. The reason it has Safety Goggles is in the Zacian matchup and Xerneas matchup, you'll see Volcarona a lot with Rage Powder. That lets Ho-Oh bypass that Rage Powder. It can then get a one-hit KO on Zacian, and it can do usually over half, probably 3/4 on Xerneas. So if it's already damaged, then you win. And then we've got its best buddy Hitmontop with Intimidate and Eject Button, with Close Combat, Fake Out, Wide Guard, and Feint. Fake Out and Feint is a very fun combo where you have to kind of make the opponent guess. Just anytime you think the opponent would be best off protecting, Feint just kind of ruins their day. Wide Guard, great support, and Close Combat is its best stab. Hitmontop is max HP, and it's EV'd so that its defense and special defense are equal. Rillaboom with Grassy Surge, Assault Vest, Grassy Glide, High Horsepower, Knockoff, and Fake Out. Knockoff one-shots Calyrex Shadow. High Horsepower is great for Zacian and for Stakataka, and then Grassy Glide is just amazing in general. It is max HP, max attack, and then if you bring Hitmontop and Rillaboom together, the Intimidate and double Fake Out really pairs well. Not as well as Incineroar Rillaboom, but Again, 3 fire types was not going to make this team better. And then Regieleki is the least brought member. With Transistor, Focus Sash, Protect, Thunderbolt, Electro Weapon, Volt Switch. It's just, I don't know, it's not too great. I've thought about switching it out. I've thought about looking into Tapu Koko or Xurkitree. But for now, this is the team. I hope you liked it, and feel free to try it out. The rental code is right here, and I'll put the PokePaste in the description, so feel free to try it out whenever. Thank you so much for watching. I apologize again for being off schedule. I prefer to post Saturdays at 1, which I'm hoping to get back onto. This was just a really busy week for me, just with work and planning this vacation. And then obviously I'm on vacation this week. But I'm still going to try and get my video together and post it. I have 3 teams for Series 10 already. 3 more teams that I have for Series 10 already that I'm just working out the order that I want to post them in. The restricteds are Zamazenta, which I really love Zamazenta. It's one of the big reasons I chose Shield over Sword. So I wanted to make it as good as I could make it. Mewtwo, which is completely outclassed by Calyrex Shadow Rider for the most part. There are a couple niches that Mewtwo has that Calyrex Shadow does not. So I tried to maximize on those as much as possible, and I actually really like the team. So I'm really proud of those 2 teams. And then I've got a Dialga team with Crobat. So those are the 3 teams that I've got, and I'm going to post those, and I'm not sure the order yet. If you have a preference, go ahead and comment it down below. I'd like to know what people think, and I like all 3 teams, so I'm not really picky about which one gets posted when. But if you like the video, go ahead and leave a like, and if you want to see more, go ahead and subscribe. I post videos like this, or not exactly like this. This is my first Series 10 video, but I post Draft League videos. I have posted some Series 9 videos with Dynamax, and I'm posting Series 10 videos, obviously. I may do a tier list of just my favorite restricteds just based on design and what I think of them without taking into account their usefulness, but I might do that. And I've got some Nuzlocke that I'm working through that I'm going to post. So if any of that interests you, if you want to see or hear any of that, go ahead and subscribe because those will be coming up.